Hi, I'm Chris Giamo, and at TD Bank, we believe all citizens need to be informed about the important financial issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of Caucus, New Jersey has been provided by the Turrell Fund, a foundation serving children, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, RWJ Barnabas Health, Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. New Jersey Resources, TD Bank, and by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community. Promotional support provided by AM 970 The Answer, and by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Families children deal with grief, with loss of loved ones. The question is, where do they go for help? We are pleased now to welcome Mary Robinson, Executive Director and founder of an organization called Imagine, a Center for Coping with Loss. Your organization is dedicated to exactly what I was just speaking about. Describe your organization, Mary.
Imagine is a free year-round grief support center for children and families coping with loss due to death or illness. We provide peer grief support groups for children aged 3 to 18, young adults 18 to 30, and the parents or guardians. And all the children we serve have had either a parent, brother or sister, or a grandparent if they were a primary caregiver who has died in their life. And we also have support programs for children who have a family member coping with a life-altering physical illness. So it's a community-based model. We are currently serving over 285 children and adults from 55 New Jersey towns every 2 weeks at our center. We're able to do that because we use trained volunteers from the community.
They're volunteers.
We train them. They're volunteer facilitators. So children in grief, grief isn't pathological. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. There's nothing wrong. What kids really need after experience a loss due to death of a parent or sibling is really a caring, functional adult in their life and a safe space, and to be with other kids, find out that they're not alone, be able to tell their story, share their feelings, share memories of the person who died, and really just get support. And that's why this community model is able to use volunteers who really are just caring adults in their life who listen, create that safe space in the peer support group, and help the children express themselves and tell their story.
Mary, you understand this from a very personal level.
Yes.
You had a loss at a very young age, 14?
Yes, I was 14 when my father died of cancer. So actually one of the reasons that we have a program for kids coping with a family member with illness is, I always say, grief starts at the moment of a diagnosis. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer in 1973, he died in 1974, I was in middle school, junior school, and I started skipping school. So it was just a reaction to the disruption, the fear, the worry, everything really changed when my dad got sick. You know, he looked different. He no longer was going to work. So grief starts at the moment of diagnosis. Families need support during the illness, but they also need, obviously, support after their parent or sibling dies. Back then, in 1974, when my dad died, there was nothing. There was not even awareness that kids needed support.
Where did you go for help?
Nowhere. We didn't get help.
Was it just you and your family?
My brother and myself. My brother was a sophomore at Madison High. I was a freshman. My mom
He's 15,
was a
you're 14.
Yep.
And you lose your dad.
We lose our dad. And one of the things I always say, the death of a parent especially is a traumatic loss for a child. When you think about it, a parent is a child's first love, their first psychological attachment, you know, that bonding that happens, the attachment, and it's who they depend on for their very survival. And it's the person they often would turn to during a terrible time. And they've just had a terrible time, the parent dies, and that person is gone that they would turn to. The remaining parent is going through their own grief, whether their spouse has died or a child has died, and less able to support that grieving child. My mom was so scared because stay-at-home mom, when my dad was diagnosed, he had just changed jobs. So we had no medical insurance. So we were wiped out financially. And my mom had to quickly figure out how to go to work, pay the bills, keep the house, take care of these two surly teenagers, I always say. But there was no emotional support. There was no, I thought I was the only one who didn't have a dad.
Mary, let's take a look. There's a clip that your organization has provided that talks about how one family representing countless families dealing with grief has been helped.
My favorite part about Imagine is probably just getting to hang out with everyone. Like, you get to know them. At first you're like, hi, but then pretty immediately you start to get really engaged with everybody.
What's it like for you and your colleagues to know that you are helping children, families, at this incredibly vulnerable, difficult, and painful time?
It's incredibly fulfilling for all of us. We see the profound difference the program makes in kids' lives. We actually see, even on their first night of support when a family comes in, you can see the change over the course of the evening. They come in and it's almost like there's a dark cloud over their heads. They look sad and scared. The end of the night, the kids come running out. They've made new friends. They're laughing. The parents feel such a sense of relief, like my kids are going to be okay. And the parents look lighter too. It's like there's a light now from they got support from the other parents.
Mary, just a couple things I want to get clear on. How prevalent is this?
They're currently in New Jersey, there's 109,000 bereaved children between the age of 0 to 18.
109,000?
109,000.
1 in 20?
Yes.
Georgette, help me on this. Some of the more specific services. Georgette, there's training. What do you mean for schools, houses of worship? What does that mean to train them?
So we go into, our whole goal is to create really grief-informed and trauma-informed communities.
Grief-informed?
Yes,
Translation.
Grief-sensitive, meaning that when the adults who are in children's lives, the teachers, the coaches, they understand that when they're interacting with the children and they see their behavior change, to pay attention to what's going on behind the behavior, meaning something's happened in that child's life. So my brother and I went from two, good kids to all of a sudden just acting out and becoming completely different kids. Yeah. So I say we weren't bad kids, we were sad kids. So we teach the schools and the houses of worship and the agencies that work with kids to understand that when you see behavior change, to knock on the door of that child's heart, find out what's going on in their lives, what kind of loss has happened. And loss is made up of a lot of different things. So the education we do in the community is about all types of loss: death, divorce, separation, abandonment, parental incarceration, your sibling just diagnosed with a disability. So much loss. And the human experience is to grieve. And so one of the things we want to do is make it so that wherever a child turns in their life, they can get support from an adult, because they're not all going to end up at our center.
That's right.
With 109,000 kids. So we need to make sure the community can support them as well.
But before I let you go, Mary, a couple things. First, I want to thank State Senator Thomas Kean, Jr., who actually has been on with us, particularly in our State of Affairs sister program, who told us about you and your organization. I know that he cares deeply, as do many others. All of your funding is private.
All private funding.
And you're opening up a new center, a new Imagine Center in Newark, New Jersey?
Yes, in the South Ward of
Newark. In the
South
Ward.
This fall. A city awash in grief with no grief support programs. So there's a huge need there.
Mary, thank you for all that you and your colleagues are doing every day to help those who are struggling and very often do not know where to go. And I know that our team has put up the website throughout this segment so people can reach out, find out how they can be helped, help, and make a difference. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back right after this.
To watch more Caucus New Jersey, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're pleased to welcome Dr. Joseph Helms, founder and president of an organization called the Acus Foundation. Good to see you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Acus stands for?
Acus is Latin for needle, and therefore it's part of the beginning of acupuncture. And I've been bringing medical acupuncture into the U.S. military for the last 10 years.
That's what the foundation is all about?
That's what the foundation's all about.
Why into the military?
Why into the military? Because the military needs it. We started this, we were invited by the Air Force to start an acupuncture training program during the Iraq-Afghanistan period when there were many damaged soldiers coming back. After 9/11 and the consequences of 9/11. And there were a lot of damage to military service members that came back, both with physical as well as psychological, psychospiritual damage, and weren't being handled in as comprehensive a way as was.
What are they dealing with, Doctor?
They're dealing with physical pain, the traumas of explosions. They're dealing with psychological pain from the trauma of seeing buddies blown up by IEDs. They're dealing with psychospiritual angst of having their lives turned around and not ever being able to find what they left, as well as the more garden variety problems of respiratory problems from the sand and the wind, sleep problems from night missions, fatigue, profound fatigue from never finding a safe place to rest while they're at downrange.
Acupuncture, and I, only because I've tried multiple times for something I'm sure a lot less, migraines, and it has been very helpful to me. But more importantly, to the veterans who are struggling, dealing with a whole range of very complex physical, emotional, psychological issues, how does acupuncture help them?
Acupuncture addresses the problems, both the problems that are presenting, such as the headache, but also the problems behind the problems.
These are much more severe headaches that you're talking about.
Are the headaches coming from stress? Are the headaches coming from sleep disturbances? Are the headaches coming from bad memories?
I was going to say nightmares. I mean,
exactly.
Horrific.
So with the acupuncture, we try to address not just the symptoms, but the drivers behind the symptoms. And while it's not a panacea, it doesn't cure everything. It's a very safe and often effective technique that doesn't bring with it the complications of addiction or drug dependency.
What is opioid? I read that what you and your colleagues are doing at the Acus Foundation helps with respect to the opioid addiction crisis. How?
It does not treat the addiction itself. What we do is train the doctors that prescribe those drugs. So we train the doctors that treat the pain or that address the pain that can and has in the past moved to opioid dependency, because I mean that's the way we were trained. That's the way pain was handled. But if you use the acupuncture as the initial or early intervention for an acute or a chronic pain, you can frequently reduce the need for or eliminate the need for the pharmaceutical component.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
How do you train these physicians?
Well, let's call it our flagship project.
Where's that, out in Nevada?
It's in Nevada, right. It's at the Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. We have a champion there.
I'm actually taking a look at it as you talk about it. Go ahead.
We have a champion in-house who was the family medicine residency director. He did our acupuncture program independently, went back, was using it a lot in the resident clinic. The residents were excited about it. He asked us to go and show them what we could do, teach them in a weekend. They were enthusiastic enough so that we created a program specifically for them. So it's really the best training opportunity that we have. It's 5 4.5-day sessions spread out over an academic year, where they have both didactic demonstration, hands-on supervision, and practice with patients at each of these sessions.
Why do you do this, Doctor?
Why do I do it?
Yeah.
Because it needs to be done.
Why you?
Why me?
Yeah, I need to understand why you. There are so many other folks who could have done this. You chose to do it.
I've been teaching acupuncture for 40 years. 10 years ago, we were invited to get involved with the military. In the first 5 years of that time, we developed techniques, protocols, and had the experience to confirm that the acupuncture, we call it medical acupuncture because it's a combination of traditional principles and contemporary scientific approaches. We've been able to develop protocols that address, not completely, but fairly convincingly, the pain problems, acute and chronic, the sleep problems, the post-traumatic stress problems, the general stress problems. And we were successfully delivering that to Air Force and Navy and a few Army physicians between 2008 and 2012, at which point the funding started being slowed down.
Cut, right.
There was
Where's the funding come from now?
The funding now completely comes from the Acus Foundation. It's a 501c3 nonprofit
You have to raise
charitable
money.
organization. We have to raise money.
Yeah,
to
same
do
here,
that.
right?
I'm sorry?
Same here.
Same
That's
here,
what we do,
right.
to be able to do no money, no
Exactly.
mission.
Exactly.
You raise money on a regular basis.
We raise money in order to do the training at the Nellis Air Force Base and beyond. We've given programs at other Air Force bases, one day first aid acupuncture. We've taught at several VAs to get them involved in acupuncture, seed planting training, but things that they can walk out and do.
The next 6 months, next month to a year, what happens
So
at
the
the
question you asked
foundation?
is why me?
Yeah, why you?
Because I can do it, and because I could not ethically stop doing it when the money dried up. And when money completely dried up in 2013, 2014, I created the foundation, and that just gave us 1 year of gap between 14 and 15 until we had the money to start at the Nellis Air Force
All
Base.
private money.
All private money.
Dr. Joseph Helms, founder, president, and the passion and conviction behind an organization called the Acus Foundation. And I know, that, again, the website has been up, Doctor, and I hope people can find a way to be helpful in the way you and your colleagues, or help you and your colleagues continue to help so many who have the need. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll be right back right after this.
To watch more Caucus New Jersey, find us online and follow us on social media.
Once again, we welcome our good friend, Dr. Arturo Brito, Executive Director of the Nicholson Foundation. Good to see you, Doctor.
Great to see you, Steve. Thanks.
We've been at this for less than a year. I can't even believe it. Our initiative called Right From the Start NJ. You'll be seeing the website up throughout the entire segment. That website has been made possible in large part because of your foundation. We've been working with the Terrell Fund and others on this initiative called Right From the Start. Right From the Start means?
Well, right from the start means that we really need to be focused on those first few years of life, birth and technically prenatally, up until at least the first 3 years of life, because they're so critical to not only the child at that time, but there can be lifelong consequences for that child if we don't do a better job of making sure that every child in the state of New Jersey has the potential to grow to his or her ability.
Doctor, let's make it clear so people understand your interest in this is not simply because you're the head, the executive director, the executive director of the Nicholson Foundation. Your clinical background is?
I'm a pediatrician. And my entire clinical practice professionally, there's one thing I found consistent with every single parent I saw, regardless of what background, regardless of what culture, regardless of what socioeconomic circumstance they were in, is that every parent wants their child to grow and develop to his or her potential. And that's why we focus on those first few years of life.
Talk about this. By the way, if you go on the website, you're going to see a whole range of articles and clips from previous segments, part of this ongoing series called Right From the Start NJ that we're doing and will continue to be doing. There's something called, and I've heard you talk about this in different seminars we've had, toxic stressors.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah. So toxic stressors refers to those stressors that can be persistent, that can be chronic and can be severe in anyone, but particularly in children. Examples include exposure to domestic violence, physical abuse, exposure to crime in the neighborhood, and even outright neglect of the needs of that child.
Is poverty included?
Extreme poverty that is persistent over long periods of time is absolutely included. It's one of those stressors that can become toxic.
How? The word toxic and stress, the first time I heard it was when you said it, again, at a forum. Define it versus, oh, that's regular stress.
Right. It's really important to understand that stress exists in life regardless, but stress doesn't have to become toxic. And there are positive stresses in life, and there are tolerable stresses, and then the most severe are toxic stressors. And toxic stressors happen, again, when there's a repeated exposure to abuse, domestic violence, and you go down the list. And particularly when there isn't a buffering system, a parent or an adult in that child's life that can help that child feel, or infant, that's just because we're talking about the first few years of life, feel secure, feel safe, help them through stressful events that are part of life. And that's why it's really important for everyone to understand. And this is why we have this Right from the Start NJ public awareness campaign. We want to make sure that all parents, policymakers, professionals, that everyone in the state understands that they can help infants and toddlers in those first few years by being there for them, making sure they're not exposed to stressful events that can become toxic, and when they are exposed to stressful events, being there for them to help them through them.
Doctor, break this down a little bit more. The longer-term effects or the long-term effects of some of these toxic stressors include?
Well, yeah, this is what's really interesting. You know, studies have shown for decades now. In fact, there was a landmark study called Adverse Childhood Experiences that focused on that. This is similar to the terminology of toxic stress, so we can use them equally here.
Right.
That showed that infants and young children that were exposed to toxic stress in those first few years of life again tended to become adults who not only had increased emotional and mental health problems as one would expect, but they also had increased incidence of physical problems, medical problems such as high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, and even some forms of cancer. And it's a fascinating study, and now it's 20 years later, and we know so much more. The science could not be more clear about those connections.
There's actually a longitudinal study looking at this?
There have been several studies since then looking at this and understanding those exposures and what they mean for lifelong health.
But you know, Arturo, one of the things that we've talked about a lot in terms of public policy, what actually Governor Murphy, the state legislature, there are some state legislators who have shown some real interest in this.
Right.
Clearly, there's not enough in the legislature. And again, by the way, check out our website for some of those in-depth interviews with policymakers, legislators, others. We actually just spoke with United States Senator Cory Booker, who spoke about this issue from a national perspective. What can and should policymakers be doing regarding these infants and toddlers, and along with the prenatal care issue?
Yeah. Well, I think first we should say that the current administration in New Jersey, we're very fortunate that they have a big focus on maternal and child health. I think it's a really good
the Murphy
time.
Administration.
Correct. The Murphy
And you're engaging
administration.
them as well. You're talking to some of those folks.
Correct. And, you know, because our foundation, we work best by developing these private-public partnerships.
That's right.
And so we really work with them. And it's not just us. A lot of people work in this administration, and they're really listening. A point about how they're really putting resources into those first few years. They just released more than $4 million in grants throughout the state to address the issues of maternal and infant mortality, particularly black infant mortality. Because
Black infant mortality?
Correct.
Worse.
Oh, it's been a problem in New Jersey and nationally, but particularly in New Jersey for decades now.
What's this grant going toward? Make it clear.
Well,
For grant from the state government.
two different agencies that
Yes.
applied, and now they're going to tackle this issue in their communities to not only lessen the black infant mortality, but really eliminate the disparity between black infants and non-Hispanic white infants, because it's been, honestly, a little bit of a challenge addressing it for the last few decades, and a bit of an embarrassment for the state of New Jersey.
An embarrassment.
Yeah. Well, let me give you some numbers.
Sure.
The latest data back from 2015 shows that non-Hispanic white infants mortality, meaning a child who won't make it past their first birthday, that rate was 3.0. Out of every 1,000 children, 3 would die. Black infant mortality in the state of New Jersey had actually decreased from the year before, but decreased to 9.7. That's still 3 times higher.
Almost 10?
Almost 10. It used to be, before that, it was in double digits. So, and it's done this before, where it dipped down a little bit, go back up. And I congratulate the current administration for tackling this with the grants that they've put out there. And we have to remember, black infant mortality rate, that's how many children don't make it past their first birthday. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I suspect that what's going to happen is that they're going to start, while they're addressing the issue, they're also going to find a number of other issues that are related to early childhood development, particularly for this minority population, who happen in many cases to be in lower socioeconomic groups, who happen to live in communities that have greater incidence of those stressors that we tend to talk about.
Finally, before I let you go, Doctor, this is everyone's responsibility, is it not?
It is.
Because?
It is. Because if we really care about our children in our state, and we take care of our children in our state, it's actually going to improve the health of our communities and the health of our state. And it's just not only the right thing to do, but it's really the smart thing to do for the benefit of the state's health and economy. And I think we're foolish not to address it directly.
The initiative is called Right from the Start NJ in cooperation with the folks at the Nicholson Foundation. I want to thank you, Dr. Brito. Thanks also
Steve.
the folks at the Terrell Fund and others who are involved in this initiative. People have been fighting this fight a long time. Also with the Advocates for Children of New Jersey with our friend Seals Alkine. Thank you, Arturo.
Appreciate the time.
Well
Thanks.
done. See you next time.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of Caucus, New Jersey has been provided by the Terrell Fund, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, RWJ Barnabas Health, Delta Dental of New Jersey Resources, TD Bank, and by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. Caucus, New Jersey has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.
Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson, President and CEO of Delta Dental of New Jersey. You probably know that visiting your dentist and daily at-home care are necessary for maintaining good oral health. What you might not know is that your oral health is connected to your overall health. Oral health may impact conditions like diabetes, blood disorders, and heart disease. Regular cleanings and checkups allow your dentist to assess your risk and keep you and your smile healthy.